Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the Iron Sand Desert playing as the Forces of the Vampire Counts against the Dark Elves. And for this match I wanted to try a build I've actually seen used against me by some other players with mixed success, sometimes with good success, sometimes with no. But a cool build I've seen, and that's the triple Varghulf build. And obviously not tournament legal or anything like that, but in quick match it's surprisingly potent in my experience and can be pretty powerful. And I really wanted to give it a shot against Dark Elves, see if I can make it work. So regardless, let's dive right in. For my lord here, I decided to bring a Lamine Vampire Lord, another lord I actually wanted to test out. Generally nowadays, of course, people are talking about the Blood Dragon Lord, who's all the rage because he's overtuned as all hell and kind of ridiculous and overpowered probably for what he is. But regardless, I didn't want to run him. Usually you'll see him, or you'll see like a Karstein Lord or some other. People usually try the other ones, but I really wanted to try the Lamine Vampire Lord. She's got a cool mix of shadows and death magic, which is really nice. She's not a great caster necessarily. She doesn't have Arcane Conduit. She doesn't have any way to replenish her winds of magic super effectively. But she does have a good selection of spells. You've got Enfeebling Foe, which is really nifty. Being able to get Enfeebling Foe without having to bring a vampire for it is awesome. You can bring Wind of Death, which is nice. Of course, she does have Occam's Mind Razor and Penumbral Pendulum, which I don't have here. So you can bring a cheaper wind spell, or you can bring a great AoE buff, but we didn't bring that. Regardless, the Wind of Death, very potent, of course, and mostly just want to bring it here to disrupt my opponent if he decided to do something crazy, or really punish him for some crazy line builds. Raise Dead, and then Invocation of the Heck. She also does have some cool abilities. Seduction, which gives her an AoE speed and melee attack debuff, which is awesome. And then Lightning Reflexes, which is a self-preservation ability, basically. It gives you some more speed and some damage resistance, which is all pretty awesome. The Lamine Vampire Lord, definitely, I think, pretty cool. Otherwise, of course, on a dragon, she's got the usual kit. Swarm of Flies, breath attacks, decent AP, decent melee stats, all that good stuff. Up in the skies alongside her, we do have 4 units of Fellbats. This is basically just to pressure my opponent's harass, potentially if you brought Raven Heralds, if you brought Harpies. I wanted some tools to really harass and pressure them. And as you can see, my opponent here brought a bunch of Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, a very common sight in this matchup, and so the Fellbats should do well there. We also do have the Dire Pack on the flank here. Once again, another zoning tool. These guys are amazing against dealing with cav, for dealing with skirmishers, that sort of stuff. A very, very effective unit. And then our 3 Varghulf Goon Squad and an infantry line that looks impressive, but is in fact pretty garbo. On either flank we have zombies, normal zombies over there, it's Tithe, a bunch of skeleton spears, and then in the center the Stearnsman, who's the only thing that's vaguely respectable in this lineup. For my opponent, he decided to go with the front line of Spearmen, and probably zone away Cav from his very expensive Sisters of Slaughter here. Then he does have Mama Marathi up here in the sky. She does have Heartrender and Dark Sword and Enchanting Beauty, which is crazy powerful against vampire counts. Having a minus 18 melee attack on a faction that doesn't have very good melee attack to begin with means that, for example, your Fellbats have 0 melee attack, or your Spearmen Spears have 0 melee attack around her, which is just nuts. It's a huge debuff, and probably one of the things that can really screw vampire counts in this matchup. Otherwise, Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, of course, great for pressuring my Varghulfs or my Lord if they are left unattended. And then 2 Cold One Dread Knights, or Cold One Spear Riders, or, wow, I can't talk, Cold One Knights in the back. And these guys, of course, a decent anti-large option. Not great, but okay. Finally, we do have the Sisters of Slaughter are, of course, going to munch through this front line. Even the Stearnsmen are no match for them, I'm pretty sure. My opponent, though, wasting a Soul Stealer here. This bit of a mistake. You don't want to use a Soul Stealer on bats. Soul Stealer's about healing. Soul Stealer's about healing. It's about doing some damage to single targets. Instead, it's just wasted here. Fellbats are trash units that I'm kind of throwing away. Certainly, I understand that my opponent wants to get rid of them quick so he can get good use out of his Dark Riders, but at the same time, it's just such a garbage unit. Over here, Mama Marathi running for dear life as the Varghulf squad just plows through, going after her, just focusing on her. I do hit her with an Enfeebling Foe. They're trying to weaken her and make her an easy target. My opponent just desperately bobbing and weaving, and he is forced to commit his Cold One Knights, which is a nice little thing for me. Because as you can see, if you take an overarching look, I've got bats chasing the Cold One Spear Riders, or the Dark Riders. I've got bats chasing Dark Riders over here. I'm sneaking my Dire Pack around the flank. And these 2 Dark Riders are distracted right now. So my opponent being forced to pull his Cav into this pocket is not great. It means he's not able to escort his other units, and it also means that he's going to get stuck here. He's going to get stuck here with all his cav in the middle of a pocket of Varghulfs, soon to be also hit with a summon of zombies, and we're just going to annihilate these Cold One Knights and really dumpster these troops. And you can see the Lamian Lord there just kind of plowing through with their dragon, going to be able to get on these Dark Riders and do some damage, even though Mama Marathi decides to be a bit of a pain in the rear and harass us. Seduction does still affect all these guys, so minus 26 melee attack, making them much weaker, and the Varghulfs just whomping on these guys. You can see the Cold One Knights down to 30 miles over here, 25 over there, really not having the time of their lives. The bats over here do catch the repeater crossbows. My opponent not quite able to keep up with the micro, I think, and now the Cold One Knights are rampaging. They're terrified. They're going to get destroyed, and so this heavy cap contingent is basically gone. Now that said, the map is not looking that grim for my opponent. Here in the front line, you can see the Dread Spears and the Sisters of Slaughter are slaughtering my chaff. The Tithe, the Sternsmen, all those troops kind of useless, but we did manage to actually pull some of our spearmen through the line because my opponent kind of got muddled up, trying to at the same deal with my front line at the same time dealing with my backline incursion, that we are able to bog down his infantry here on our own pocket of trash. And then our Varghulfs break clear, and our Lamian Lord breaks clear, and we're able to start pursuing these Dark Riders. And now the hunt is on in earnest. You can see over here the Dire Pack trying to pursue these Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. One of the unfortunate things here is that we're just not able to catch them. We're not fast enough. This is one of the reasons why it might be nice to bring a Vampire of Shadows here, just to get that slow. But despite the fact that we do have, of course, our Lamian Vampire Lord, but unfortunately, bats, despite supposedly being fast, the way they attack, they tend to not be able to snare units on the ground, and units like Dire Pack are just barely faster, so they're going to struggle unless they hit their charge animation. That said, my opponent over here, although he's trying to bog me down with his Dark Riders while shooting me with the second unit, which is definitely pretty potent, we do, of course, have the hunger, and we are going to be able to get a summon of zombies on these guys and bog them down, prevent them from firing, and clear up our Lamian Lord. And you can see these guys down to like 24 miles, not where they want to be in life. And over here, the Varghulfs just mulching through the Cold One Knights. They still have the zombies, some protecting them. There's still these spears sitting around, being a nuisance. Sternsmen are over here whomping on these Sisters of Slaughter. And Sternsmen will trade okay. They do have regen. They do have some decent armor. They've got very respectable melee stats of their own, so they're going to hold out okay against the Sisters, and just think that they do lose in the long run. In the meantime, though, the Cold One Knights are going to get dumpstered by the Varghulfs, so they're going to be forced to rout from the field. And these spears at this point are way too slow to be a serious threat, so we're going to be able to simply pull away with our Varghulfs and start shutting down my opponent's peripheral troops. And you can see the Dire Pack here doing a great job with up to 30 kills, just running down these Dark Riders and munching on them. And they're just not able to escape. Dire Pack's such an immensely powerful unit. They don't have quite the same stats as some of the other crazy anti-large hound squads like, say, Beasts of Tashnar, but because you can't rout them because they're undead, I find that they're actually better in some ways. You can see they just drag these Dark Riders into the dust once they do start catching them. I really do wish these guys had poison, or there was some access to poison for vampire counts in this situation, but oh well, what can you do? Regardless, my opponent is going to commit his Cold One Knights here, just trying to save his troops, and I kind of mess up here. I should have committed my Cold One Knight, my Dire Pack into the Cold One Knights, gotten to charge off, but regardless, the Cold One Knights, despite their 90 armor, they are not going to be able to hold out. The Dire Pack is just way too good at killing large, even armored large. They'll do okay against. If perhaps you've seen some of my replays, I've use them even against things like Demigryph Knights, and they'll do pretty well for their cost, especially when you're supporting other units. So the Cold One Knights here just get dumpstered, get torn apart, and they are both shattered. In the meantime, though, my opponent using Mama Marathi here to try to harass my Varghulfs, which is kind of clever. The Varghulfs are actually getting stunned by the hits, and Marathi getting some value. But the Varghulf now does turn around and start slapping her, so she is going to be forced to reconsider her life decisions and back off, as my Lamian Lord here is pursuing these Dark Riders, trying to force them off the map. But unfortunately, we don't get the rear charge of my opponent. Very quick on his micro, which is good for him, not good for me. And so we're not going to get another terror out, because they've been terror out recently, I do believe. And so they're, despite the fact that we do land a little bit of a hit here, they are going to be able to kind of extricate themselves, I do believe. Elsewhere in the meantime, our Dire Pack still chasing these guys like mad. And if we're taking an overarching look at this point, balance of power dead even, but a bit of a lie. It's a bit of fake news there. The zombies over here, obviously probably skewing a little bit. My opponent here shooting into the zombies is probably hurting his troops more than it is me, because this summon. We're actually able to remove those Dark Riders from the field. But there are still Dark Riders over here being chased by the Dire Pack, who's actually diminished, so they basically have no chance of catching them. My opponent does manage to intercept my bats here with Marathi, which kind of sucks. And the Varghulf, although trying to catch these Dark Riders, is not fast enough. It's only got 82 speed. These guys are actually still active, so they just really don't care. The bats over here are losing to Marathi. There's not much I could do. I could have probably pulled them away and just tried to chase these guys, and that would have been smarter, but oh well, we done goofed. In the meantime, the Dire Pack over here, we can see chasing the Dark Riders, trying to land another kill for the day. Despite being diminished, they're going to start nipping at these guys' heels and dragging a few of them down, because they are a decent unit at dragging light cav like this into the muck, and they do manage to finally catch them, finally snare them, and my opponent is going to lose this unit, and you can see it's just getting torn apart by those dogs. Elsewhere, though, it's a bit of a Benny Hill action. After getting rid of my opponent's cavalry, my opponent still does have this very powerful pocket of infantry, and so I'm kind of forced into this Benny Hill game of Varghulfs chasing the cav. Unfortunately, my Lamian Lord doing something really stupid here, as she's flying over this, I don't even know how to, there's no way to draw this, but she flew over this rock, and it ended up slowing her down immensely, and I don't know why the AI decided it has to fly over like the tip of the rock. It's so dumb, but literally you could just fly under it, but it cost me quite a lot of time, and that's why the Lamian Lord is limping along so badly. Now Marathi here does get a little cheeky, trying to get some damage in, but the Varghulfs do turn around, and they're going to start slapping her down, and Marathi really cannot stand up to Varghulfs. Varghulfs are not a bad unit. They've actually got respectable stats. You can see they've got like 55 and 42 or something. It's pretty enough, 50 and 42 there. So very respectable. The Dark Riders with the Repeater Crossbows here, running for dear life. This is the final unit for me to knock out. And so what I decided to do here is I do pop Seduction, trying to drag Marathi into the muck. And we're going to take our Varghulfs and jump into the Sister Slaughter and start trying to pound them down. Varghulfs do have some charge bonus. They do have the charge bonus is 50, so it's okay. And if we can start picking these guys off, we'll do okay. Obviously, we don't want to get stuck in a sustained fight, but if we can do some damage, we'll do well. And Marathi is forced down to the ground, where she gets slapped at least once by Varghulf. Not what she wants in life. We do try to get a breath attack there, but it kind of whiffs, so what can you do? That said, the Dire Pack here does get a little bit of a snag on these Dark Riders, but my opponent kind of threading them expertly through his line. Seduction actually slowing those guys down still, but the Dire Pack is actually forced to detach, so it can swing wide again to continue its chase. Meantime, we're desperately trying to shut down Marathi, but Marathi being a pain in the rear. Despite that, though, my opponent no longer has Murder's Prowess. He's basically just stuck here. We are going to pop an Invocation of the Neck to keep our Varghulfs in good shape, and are just going to pressure Marathi at this point while summoning some zombies up on top of these guys. We actually had a lot of Winds of Magic left over, because I just hadn't been using too much Winds of Magic throughout this game. I didn't really heal my trash mob, and I didn't really use much Invocation of the Neck because the Varghulfs have regen. So, unfortunately for my opponent, though, here, the Dark Riders are trying to shoot at the, I almost called her Lady, but the Lamian Lord. She does get into them, and then the Dire Pack is in there, and the Varghulfs are in there, and now the Dark Riders are falling apart. And yeah, that is going to be game at this stage. Shortly thereafter, my opponent actually decided to leave the game by disconnect, which, oh well, that is what it is. Not much to say. We can see we are going to tear apart these Dread Spears a little bit before that happens. But as Mama Marathi does try to land, it is going to be a pure victory for the Divine Power counts. So if we look at the death at the model count at the end of the game, it looks a bit different. The games looks a bit different than it did in practice. I simply managed to remove most of my opponent's critical units from the field early on, and I managed to cripple Marathi. So the fact that we only had like 50 models at the end didn't mean very much. It didn't really mean wasn't really all that painful for me. The simple fact is the Varghulfs, that's like the Varghulfs plus the Lamian Lord plus the Dire Pack is like 2/3 of my army right there. The rest of this army is dirt cheap trash troops, so except for the Sternsmen. So yeah. As far as the build goes, it's kind of fun. I'm not sure it's like what I would say is good go-to, but it can definitely be pretty punishing to the Dark Elves who don't have too many great options against Varghulfs. Like, you do have your Dark Riders with their Repeater Crossbows, but you can kind of dodge around, and Varghulfs are pretty quick on their feet. They're pretty nippy, and Varghulfs, of course, have their own self-sustain. They've got their own regen. They can do some good damage to Cold War Knights and units like that. And on the charge, they'll do okay against Sisters Slaughter and units like that as well. I'm not sure they're necessarily best combo to say Lamian Lord. I think you might be better off with alternative Lord choices, or alternative, perhaps, combos, perhaps trying to bring some heavy cav with them or something along those lines. I definitely think the bats might have been a mistake. I think in hindsight, I would have probably been better off with Direwolves, because they do better at actually catching and hitting the Dark Rider models. The Dire Pack here did more work than all 4 bats combined, arguably. Certainly not early on. The bats being able to disrupt was useful, but had I had 2 direwolves and like a fellbat instead of 4 fellbats. I think that would have been much more useful. But yeah, the Lambing Lord, she did okay. The Seduction was immensely powerful in that pocket fight. It managed to debuff those Cold One Knights into oblivion. We managed to really tear Marathi apart with Unfeeling Foe a few times. And that also threatened her and forced her out of fights a lot of the time. Seduction with the slow was just so immensely powerful. And although it didn't really show, or I didn't get to show it too much, the mobility was nice. So I definitely do enjoy the Lambing Lord. Maybe not the best of the bunch, but she's definitely very fun. And I think she's actually pretty well balanced. Which can't be said for Saint Blood Dragon. Regardless, well played to my opponent here. Definitely was a fun game. The Sisters of Slaughter, pretty potent. I don't think the Sisters of Slaughter are necessarily going to be the best unit in this situation. There's a big issue that with Dark Riders, if your opponent, or with the Reliance and kind of Dark Riders to screen, if your opponent brings like Blood Knights, this build is screwed in my opinion. Certainly, Dark Riders could pick apart Blood Knights, but if your opponent, say, brings a couple... if your opponent brings a couple of Dire Wolves or Dire Pack, honestly, if I didn't have if I didn't have the Varghulfs here, if I say did, if I had 2 Dire Wolves, Dire Pack, and then triple Blood Knight or something, or some sort of build along those lines, some build that gave me like triple, maybe ditch the Dragon as well, just some build that gave me like triple Blood Knights, this build would be screwed. Because Sisters of Slaughter are just so very susceptible to heavy cavalry charges, and 2 Cold One Knights are not going to be enough to protect you from heavy cav. The Blood Knights are going to win that cav fight, they're going to get rid of your Cold One Knights, and then basically they can just chase down them, and the Wolves can chase down the Dark Riders, while your Sisters of Slaughter get annihilated by rear charges. So that's just my 2 cents. On build, otherwise I do think the build against most Vampire kind of builds will hold up rather well, but I do think against heavy cav it's going to struggle immensely, and I think something here would have to be reworked perhaps a little bit. Even if you just gave yourself like Witch Elves in here somewhere to control your opponent a little better, that might be good. Regardless, well played. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, as usual, don't hesitate to post them. I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.